Hey, and welcome to Chopping It Up. Chopping It Up is a interview series where I bring amazing, fantastic, wonderful, just all the love and adoration to our just people.
So,
I
so what happened this week?
What was that? Oh,
Yeah, what happened this week? What went wrong?
uh, see, and I'll get there. If you don't know my guest, Colin, you might know him on social media as Prestwich Blue. Uh, we connected when I was in Manchester. Literally was the last person I saw in Manchester. We got some lunch. He walked me to the station, made sure I got to the train to London nice and safe. Top gentleman, amazing person. Uh, got a nice, amazing history lesson from him. Uh, he is honestly the exact type of person that I wanted to connect with while I was in Manchester. Just people who have been around the game for a while. Who he is, he's well connected. And just hearing his stories, I was running around like a crazy person the entire time that I was in Manchester, and that was the thing that upset me. I was like, oh, I never got a history lesson about City because I try to respect the culture as much as possible. I feel like that's also why so many people, I guess, enjoy and appreciate what we do because they see that how much I do care about the grand scheme of the football game. And I asked him to come on the pod, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, I got some time." And so here we are, Shady Gang, for the first time. Please give it up for the OG, the legend, Colin. How are
Oh,
you?
that's a very fulsome introduction. Thank you.
And I meant every word of it. There's one thing that I learned very early on is I'm not the best at like lying and faking things, and especially on a medium like this, it eventually catches up with you, or you have to remember the lies and things like that. And I've never been good at that, so I truly meant it. It is an honor to have you on and to talk a little bit about football and culture with you.
Yeah, well, it was great to see you as well. I mean, I always love seeing our American fans because they're so full of enthusiasm, and that's what I love. And to be able to pass some of that on to to our newer fans and newer younger fans, and yeah, I think it's really important to understand the history as well
Yeah.
because obviously if you've been a City fan for 10, 15 years, all you've basically seen is success.
Mhm.
I know, there's been one or two seasons where we've not won anything, of course, but we're a top global attraction. And the thing about City is the history is so great. We've been through everything.
Yes.
There's nothing that we haven't been through. Even this current stuff with the Premier League and the charges, we went through all that in 1904. It's a very similar experience. So, yeah, we've been through it all.
Oh man, hey, and
I
obviously,
wasn't there in '94. I must point this out. But
uh, I hey,
what's the great thing about history is everything is there.
um, I always start our these types of episodes off with a very simple, easy question: how did you fall in love with football? And how did you become a Manchester City fan? Usually, with the English, it's a pretty straightforward answer, but again, it's always still very fun hearing people's football origin stories, as we call it. So, yeah, how did you fall in love with football, and how did you become a Manchester City fan?
Yeah, might not be quite so straightforward, but if you were born in Manchester, in the same way you were born in Liverpool, Manchester Football City, so you couldn't, the time I was a youngster, City were in the doldrums. They were going nowhere in the old second division, what's now the Championship. Manchester United were the up and coming team. Matt Busby had rebuilt the team after the Munich air disaster. I think, not sure if George Best was there at that particular point. We're talking about early mid 60s. I'm that old. Um, Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law. United was starting to become the glory team, if you like. And funny enough, people will probably say, "Well, my family were all City fans." Mine were. My dad, his father, were not football fans. But you couldn't, going to school, you couldn't ignore the football. Everyone was a football fan. Probably 99% of the kids were United fans. And even in my family, say on my dad's side, my two uncles, they were both Manchester United ticket holders. On my mum's side of the family, her uncle and her cousin, fanatical United fans. You didn't know many City fans, to be honest. And as it happens, when I was at school, my best pal at school was a chap called Ray Chadfield. He's now sadly departed. And Ray was a fanatical City fan. And he basically brainwashed me every day, every Monday. He'd tell me stories of going to Main Road. And it might be the most uneventful game, might be a reserve game. I remember him telling me, about how few fans there were there. I mean, he went to this legendary game, the lowest ever crowd at Main Road, just over 8,000.
Oh wow!
Against Timple Swindon, which Mike Summerby was playing for at the time. He was at that game, and he was just City mad, and his family was City mad. And Ray just brainwashed me into supporting City. And it was kind of a bit of a struggle. It's usually dads getting the sons to go to football. I had to persuade my dad to take us to games.
Wow.
And eventually he got hooked and became a City fan. And
Love it.
we ended up to go to games in the kind of later mid 60s. And then we got season tickets. So it was basically all to do. If Ray hadn't been my pal, I would probably not have been a City fan.
That actually, you were very right. That isn't the usual typical story where it's the kid who has to be like, "Dad, please take me." And I mean, we'll talk about the derby a little bit later, but I was thinking about this with the hooliganism that was kind of about the game in like the 80s and the 90s. How was that experience? Because when I look at City now, or I talk to City fans, or even when I'm around older City fans, they all seemed like such nice human beings and such sweet people. And even City from other fan bases, they're known for being kind of like a chill set of people. Was that a problem or prevalent at all in, at least on the City half of the fan base? Was there a lot of hooliganism?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was a lot of it. There were certain grounds you would go to, and I didn't go looking for that sort of stuff.
Naturally,
The guys I were looking for that sort of action, but it was like, if I could describe it, if you were, I remember being an FA Cup game up in Newcastle, and everything kicked off big time. There's a pitch invasion and fighting on the pitch, and
oh wow,
we were on a bus, but the guys who had to get back to the station, it's not that far from St James's Park to the station. It was like something out that movie, The Warriors.
Yeah,
Where people waiting for you around every corner. If you went over to Leeds, you knew it was going to be trouble. I remember being chased around the back streets of Stoke on Trent, trying to find the coach would come on, because I just, a gang chasing you, and you just ran. You didn't think about where you were going until they gave up. Yeah, it was. The City fans had I must tell one story. Is we went down to West Ham. West Ham was probably West Ham and Chelsea were probably two of the most notorious sets of fans. And in those days, you paid on the gates. There wasn't much segregation, and the West Ham fans had basically infiltrated the area where most of the City fans and were attacking us. And we left the game before it even kicked off. We were back in London, by the time the game probably kicked off
Oh
because
wow.
it just wasn't. So that was the sort of experiences you got. But there was a city, what we call a firm called the Young Governors and the Cool Cats. They could hold their own.
Yes, I know of the
Uh,
Cool Cat.
Main
Yeah.
Road, yeah, Main Road was um, considered a tough gig as an away fan.
Hmm.
There were lots of, if you sit and seen pictures of the ground, it was in a built-up area, a bit like where Everton's ground is now. Built-up area, houses up almost up to the gates. Lots of what we call back alleys, that behind the house that went behind the houses, and if you got caught, if you were an away fan, you got caught in those, you were in trouble. Basically. So yes, City fans could hold their own. We weren't always the nice group of people we are now.
Let's go. Yeah, I definitely heard about Cool Cats. That was something early on that people. I wish I could remember who it was, but they were like, "Hey, you should look into this. I feel like you'd be interested in them and their story." And I was. So yeah, that's okay. Cool, great. Uh, here is the next set of questions. It is, what is something that is overrated and underrated about football? Let's start with overrated.
Right. So I don't know. It made me think about this actually. In some ways, the current matchday experience is overrated. We said it. There's no hooliganism anymore, so in that sense, it's a good thing. But it can be a very sanitized experience. So, for example, I'm not sure if American audience are aware, um, you're not allowed to take alcohol into your seat. And if I went to sit in my same seat and I was watching a concert at the Etihad or I was watching a rugby game, I would be allowed to drink in my seat
Mm-hmm.
because it's a football. I'm not. And in fact, I had to. An American friend was over and went to a game with him, and we got a pint, and he was about to wander in, and I kind of grabbed him back and said, "You will get thrown out the ground if you walk." And that's sort of um, and we talked about the hooliganism of the 70s, 80s, but there was a great feeling of standing on a terrace. You had these huge standing terraces, and you go to a big game, the terraces were packed, and something would happen, the crowd would move forward. And in fact, I should mention it's the anniversary of the Hillsborough disaster
Mm.
today, April the 15th of 1989, when 97 people died from being crushed in the game. And there was always that danger. But yeah, it's a very different experience. It's more like a trip to the theatre these days than the raw experience it used to be, which is not necessarily all a bad thing. But and the other thing that always gets my goat is, and I always often talk about this, watch any other sport on TV, and the punditry is really knowledgeable, articulate, knowledgeable, virtually any sport. The Masters golf, the pundits can tell you what's going on. They can give you insight. Football, it's absolutely terrible. You get some the vast majority of inarticulate pundits making inane comments. Gary Neville was actually a breath of fresh air, believe it or not, when he burst on the scene with Sky, because he would actually talk about tactics. He would give you some insight, and
Mm.
you listen to someone today, and it's just kind of agenda driven, almost like it's about who can say the most outrageous, stupid thing. So that's
I'm
definitely
with
one of
you.
the things that miles behind any other sport, or in the UK, cricket, rugby. The pundits, the commentators, the pundits, all really knowledgeable. Again, I watch, essentially watch NFL, MLB, baseball. Again, the commentators, the pundits, they know what's going on. They pick out the things that you don't see as an ordinary viewer. So that's another thing. And VAR, people moan. I was quite happy when VAR came in because referees made a lot of mistakes. There was always a theory that refs deliberately made mistakes. There was one famous game, Manchester United versus Arsenal. Arsenal were on a very long unbeaten run. They came to Old Trafford, and Mike Riley, who was the head of the referees organisation, refereed that game. And it was so one-sided, it was unbelievable. I mean, you let United players get away with absolute murder. And VAR coming and thought, well, good, because that's going to stop all that sort of stuff and the arguments about offside and stuff like that. And it's been so misused and so poorly used. So that's some of the things that's overrated, I think. In terms of underrated, like I said, the match day experience was in some ways